Oh, it's so sad that we lost our
Thank you, and please be seated.
people in the Congo defending Ramaphosa's minds.
Order, honorable members. Honorable members, the President has called this joint sitting of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces in terms of Section 84, subsection 2D of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, read with Joint Rule 13, subsection 1A, to deliver his State of the Nation address to Parliament. I now call on the Honorable the President to address the joint sitting.
Ja, laat ons hoor wat 'n Nwata Ramaphosa het om te sê. Teknis Ramaphosa.
Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members, can we please take our seats? Honorable members, can we please take your seat and allow the President to address the House and the nation?
Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Toko Didiza, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Ms. Refilwe Ntsweni-Tsipane, Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, Paul Mashatile, Chief Justice of the Republic, Mandi Samaya, and Judges President, former President of the Republic, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, former President Kgalema Motlanthe, former Deputy President David
This guy really now not gonna mention Zuma's name. Huh?
David Mabuza, former Speaker of the National Assembly,
Is this guy really not gonna greet Ramaphosa? Ach, Zuma.
former Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Lichisa Tsinodi, former Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Mr. Amos Masondo, Mayor of the City of Cape Town, Mr. Gordon Hill Lewis,
Okay, as hy by Louis uitkom, kan ons maar vergiet
Dean of
van
the Diplomatic
van Zuma.
Corps, regional deans,
Nee,
and
man.
heads of missions, members of parliament, and fellow South Africans. We gather here as we mourn the death and tragic death and devastating loss of 14 South African soldiers who were part of a mission to bring peace to the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. We pay tribute and bow our heads to Staff Sergeant William Eddie Ola, Staff Sergeant Mulahlehi Ishmael Mulahlehi, Staff Sergeant Shahlane Theophilus Siepe, Corporal Matume Justice Malisa, Corporal Renae Nemabulani, Lance Bombardier Itumeleng MacDonald Mureo, Lance Corporal Tseke Moffat Molapo, Lance Corporal Metsi Stensley Raswiswi, Rifleman Sibatane Richard Chokwe, Rifleman Derek Maluleke, Rifleman Tsidiso Andris Mabele, Rifleman Calvin Louis.
I'm just quickly trying to do
Rifleman
something. Apologies.
Moketi Joseph Mobe, Private Peter Jacobus Strado. Speaker, I thank you.
Ramaphosa did not acknowledge Zuma.
Honor these fallen heroes. I have directed
Ramaphosa did
that
not acknowledge
national
Zuma.
flag be flown at half-mast in honor of these fallen heroes for a week starting from tomorrow morning. Alongside soldiers from other southern African countries, they lost their lives in defense of the fundamental right
Please, man, don't lie to the people.
of the Congolese people to
Don't
live
lie.
in peace and security.
Don't lie. Don't lie.
They lost their lives
They lost their lives
not
protecting
in
your
the pursuit
interest.
of resources,
Protecting your interest.
territory, or power. They lost their lives so that the guns on our continent may be forever silenced. So we salute them. My fellow South Africans, this State of the Nation address is taking place as we celebrate 70 years since the adoption of the Freedom Charter at the Congress of the People in Kliptown in 1955. The Freedom Charter is the cornerstone of our democratic constitution. It sets out a vision of a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous South Africa. It also sets out a vision of a country in which government is founded on the will of the people of South Africa, where the land is shared among those who work it, where the people share in the country's wealth, and in all that the country produces and are all equal before the law. It is this vision that continues to guide us as we work to build the nation that we all want. It is the spirit of the Congress of the People that inspires us as we prepare for a national dialogue in which South Africans are once again called upon to chart a new path for our country. We must chart this path in a world that is rapidly changing. It is a world of both interdependence and competition, of cooperation and conflict. It is a multipolar world in which new countries are emerging to play a greater role in global affairs. We are seeing intensifying competition over issues such as trade, technology, and influence in global institutions. There are global fundamental shifts underway that affect every aspect of human life, from the growing impact of climate change to rapid advances in artificial intelligence, geopolitical tensions, and violent conflicts. In the face of these challenges, we are witnessing the rise of nationalism, protectionism, the pursuit of narrow interests, and the decline of common cause.
What is so wrong with nationalism?
We, as South Africa, a developing economy, must now navigate. But we are not daunted to navigate our path through this world that constantly changes. We will not be deterred. We are, as South Africans, a resilient people, and we will not be bullied. We will stand together as a united nation, and we will speak with one voice in defense of our national interests, our sovereignty, and our constitutional democracy. By standing true to our values, by harnessing our unique strengths and endowments, and by forging a common purpose, we can turn these trying circumstances to our advantage and propel our country forward. As South Africans, we stand for peace and justice. We stand for equality and solidarity. We stand for a non-racial future, and we stand for democracy and tolerance as well as compassion. We stand for equal rights for women, for persons with disability, and for members of the LGBTQIA+ community. We stand for our shared humanity, not for the survival of the fittest. So this evening, let us speak of the nation that we want. Let us speak of the future that we want to build. Let us speak of the work that we as South Africans must do, and the work that we are doing to build that nation and to build that future. We want a nation united in its diversity. At many difficult moments in our past, we found strength in working together towards a common goal. Through partnership, we brought peace and democracy to our country, which was once troubled. We overcame apartheid, a crime against humanity that denied people their human rights, that deprived them of the land and livelihoods, that sought to strip them of their dignity, that humiliated them. Through partnership, we overcame a devastating pandemic and rebuilt our country in the wake of state capture as well. Together, we have built durable institutions that
What about
supported
PHALA PHALA,
democracy,
Ramaphosa? What
that
about PHALA
protect our
PHALA?
fundamental rights and
You don't want to
promote the
acknowledge
well-being of
Zuma,
South Africans.
and then you want to speak about
We've built
state
meaningful
capture?
partnerships
What
between
about
government
PHALA
and
PHALA?
business and labor and civil society and other social partners to drive growth and development. These stand as models of cooperation for the rest of the world. South Africans are continuing to work together to confront our country's challenges and build a nation that works for all. Guided by the wishes of the people as expressed in last year's elections, we have formed a government of national unity to give expression to our culture of cooperation.
It's not a government of
As
national
political
unity.
parties, we have set aside our
It's a
differences
DA
and
ANC
agreed
coalition.
to work together for the good of all South Africans. In the last week, we have adopted the medium-term development plan, which sets out a clear and ambitious program for the next 5 years. The actions contained in the medium-term development plan will advance our 3 strategic priorities. Firstly, to drive inclusive growth and job creation. Secondly, to reduce poverty and tackle the high cost of living. And thirdly, to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state. Our most urgent task is to grow our economy so that we can create jobs, reduce poverty, and improve the lives of South Africans. To undertake this task, we need a government that works for the people. We need a state that is capable, competent, underpinned by a professional public service. South Africans want a state that treats all people with dignity, humility, and respect. A state with leaders who are prepared to serve our people with complete dedication.
Resign and
public
give that to
servants
us.
who are ethical, skilled, and properly qualified. To achieve these objectives, we are strengthening the role of the Public Service Commission in the appointment of key people who direct the affairs of our state, such as Directors General, Deputy Directors General, Chief Executive Officers of SOEs and board members and other senior positions. We will introduce a graduate recruitment scheme so that we may attract the best and the brightest in the public service. A capable state must start where our people live and work. In many cities and towns across our country, roads are not maintained. Water and electricity supply is often disrupted. Refuse is not collected, and sewage runs in the streets. In part, this has happened because many municipalities lack the technical skills and resources required to meet our people's needs. Many municipalities have not reinvested the revenue they earn or collect from these services into the upkeep of infrastructure. Starting this year, we will work with our municipalities to establish professionally managed ring-fenced
You guys,
facilities for
just
water,
keep in mind that the Democratic Alliance is planning to sell Velodrome in Bellville. The Velodrome Stadium in Bellville, the DA wants to sell.
also arise from the design of our local government system. We will therefore undertake extensive consultation to develop an updated white paper on local government to outline a modern and fit-for-purpose local government system. We will also review the funding model for municipalities. We will do so because many of our municipalities truly do not have a viable and sustainable revenue base. We will work with traditional leaders in the implementation of local development programs. We will also seek to work with our traditional leaders in ensuring that they continue their own work as we give them the recognition as the natural and indigenous leaders of our people. We will expand our support to municipalities.
When you say work with your traditional and cultural leaders, do you mean acknowledging them as First Nation and restoring the land?
As we implement the district development model, which enables all key role players, as in government, business, labor, and community-based organizations, to work together. As we work to reform the public service and build the capability of the state, we will harness technology to transform the way government works. We will invest in digital public infrastructure to give South Africans access to government services anytime, anywhere, through a relaunched gov.za platform. At the heart of this transformation will be the implementation of a digital identity system. Now, these measures will in the end transform the relationship between citizens and government and create one government that is accessible to every person at a touch. We want a nation with a thriving economy, an economy that benefits all. To create this virtuous cycle of investment, growth and jobs, we must lift economic growth to above 3%. To achieve higher levels of economic growth, we are undertaking massive investment in new infrastructure while upgrading and maintaining the infrastructure that we have. We are developing innovative ways of funding infrastructure. We are engaging local and international finance institutions and investors to unlock 100 billion rand in infrastructure financing. A project preparation bid window has been launched to fast-track investment readiness. This includes revised regulations for public-private partnerships, which will unlock private sector expertise and funds. And government will spend more than 940 billion rand on infrastructure over the next 3 years. Now, this includes 375
I don't
billion
think
rand
Zuma
in
is
spending by
there
state-owned enterprises.
because he was
This
not
funding
even
will
acknowledged.
revitalize our
He wasn't
roads
greeted by the
and
president.
bridges. It will build dams and waterways. It will modernize our ports and airports and also power our economy. Through the infrastructure fund that we launched some time ago, 12 blended finance projects worth nearly 38 billion rand have been approved in the last year. These are projects in water and sanitation, student accommodation, transport, health, and energy as well. Construction of the M10 bridge in the Eastern Cape, the construction continues. This bridge will rise above the river between Port Edward and Lusikisiki and will become the tallest bridge in Africa. The Podihadi Dam in Lesotho will feed 490 million cubic liters of water a year from the Lesotho highlands into the Vaal River system, securing water supply to several provinces for years to come. Working with international partners, we are revitalizing small harbors, unlocking economic opportunities for coastal communities. We're also looking very closely at the harbor that we will build in the Northern Cape, in Bochubai, because that is going to be a game changer for the Northern Cape. We are steadily removing the obstacles to meaningful and faster growth. The economic reforms that we are implementing through Operation Vulindlela have created a new sense of optimism.
There will not be Cape independence. I'm sorry.
Investors are looking at South Africa with much more interesting eyes as they see the reforms that we are implemented through Vulindlela. We have made progress in rebuilding and restructuring a number of our network industries. We are seeing positive results in the improvement of the functioning of our network industries, as well as the investment opportunities that are opening up and are being taken up by investors, leading to job creation. Working together with business, labor, and other social partners, we must now finish the work that we started. Over the coming year, we will initiate a second wave of reform to unleash more rapid and inclusive growth. Our immediate focus is to enable Eskom, Transnet, and other state-owned enterprises that are vital to our economy to function optimally. We are repositioning these entities to provide world-class infrastructure while enabling competition in operations, whether in electricity generation, freight, rail, or port terminals. We continue with the fundamental reform of our state-owned enterprises to ensure that they can effectively fulfill their social and economic mandates. Now, this includes the work underway to put in place a new model to strengthen governance and oversight of our public entities. We will ensure public ownership of strategic infrastructure for public benefit while finding innovative ways to attract private investment, to improve services, and to ensure public revenue can be focused on the provision of public services.
Apology for the lagging.
We are in the process
Poor
of
internet
establishing
connection.
a dedicated SOE reform unit to coordinate this work. The measures we have implemented through the Energy Action Plan have reduced the severity and frequency of load shedding, with more than 300 days without load shedding since March 2024. Now, while the return of load shedding for 2 days last week was a reminder that our energy supply is still constrained, we remain on a very positive trajectory.
That was a reminder
whether people like
that
it or not.
privatization is still on the plans.
We now need to put the risk of load shedding behind us once and for all. And the Minister of Electricity will speak about it in about 2 weeks or so when he presents to Parliament. We need to put that once and for all behind us by completing the reform of our energy system to ensure long-term energy security. The Electricity Regulation Amendment Act, which came into effect on the 1st of January, marks the beginning of a new era in our energy architecture. This year, we will put in place the building blocks of a competitive electricity market. Over time, this will allow multiple electricity generation entities to emerge and to compete. We will mobilize private sector investment in our transmission network to connect more renewable energy to the grid. The Minister will tell us that we still need to install 14,000 kilometers of transmission lines. We therefore need to mobilize finance from a number of sources to enable this to happen. As we reform our energy system, we are continuing to build successful multilateral partnerships in the global effort to halt the devastating impact of climate change. Our just energy transition is gaining momentum. Over $13 billion have been pledged by the international community, and significant private capital is being invested locally. We are determined to meet our carbon reduction commitments and will do so at a pace and at a scale that our country can afford. We are revitalizing our port terminals and rail corridors through the Freight Logistics Roadmap, which was adopted by Cabinet, leveraging private capital to restore our logistics infrastructure to world-class standards. Transnet's performance has stabilized and is steadily improving. We released a network statement in December last year, which for the first time will enable private rail operators to access the freight rail system that will continue to be owned by the state. Open access to the rail network will allow train operation companies to increase the volume of goods transported by rail, while our network infrastructure remains state-owned. This will ensure that South African minerals, the vehicles that we manufacture, our agricultural produce reach international markets, securing jobs and earning much-needed revenue for our fiscus. New cranes and other port equipment are being commissioned to speed up the loading and unloading of cargo and reduce waiting times for ships in our various ports. As we forge ahead with the reform agenda, an urgent priority is to ensure a secure and reliable supply of water across the country. Many people in our cities, towns, and villages are experiencing more and more frequent water shortages as a result of failing water infrastructure. It is impossible to live without water, as we all know, and it is impossible for the economy to grow without water. We are therefore taking a series of decisive actions to resolve the water crisis, to enable our people to get water where they live, whether in townships or in the rural areas. We are investing heavily in expanding our water resources. Wherever one goes in our country, we often hear our citizens raising the issue of water continuously. So we are raising this issue to a much higher level. And like we did with electricity, I know and I am hopeful that we will resolve the water crisis that we have. Loko famba uya atindaweni to tala ukuma ku ri vakhegulu va rila hi yona mhaka leyi ya mati. Va ku byela ku ri hi hava mati, hi lava ku ri hulumeni a hi tisela mati, hi ta swi endla swaleswo. Hi lava ku ri mi tiva kahle laha mi nga tshama kona ku ri mati a ta va kona, hi ta wa tisa mi wa kuma. To date, the Infrastructure Fund has secured 23 billion rand for 7 large water infrastructure projects. We have ended delays in major water infrastructure projects like Phase 2 of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project and the Umkomazi Dam. Work is underway to prepare for construction of the Ntabelanga Dam on the Umzimvubu River to supply additional water for domestic use as well as for irrigation in the Eastern Cape. Within the next year, we will complete the establishment of the National Water Resource Infrastructure Agency to unlock much greater investment in water projects. Through the Water Services Amendment Bill, we will introduce a licensing system for water service providers and remove licenses where providers do not meet the standards for quality drinking water. As part of our reform agenda, we will ensure that our focus on water is intensive and it speeds up. As we move ahead with our reform processes, we will continue to enhance our visa system to make it easier for skilled people to invest in our country and to grow tourism. This year, we will launch the electronic travel authorization system to enable a secure, fully digital visa application process. Now, this system
Kyk hoe lekker lag hy om 'n face minister. Hy weet nou sy foreign nationals gaan makliker ingly.
and automation to reduce the scope of corruption and enable rapid turnaround times for tourist visas. We have cleared over 90% of the backlog of more than 300,000 visa applications. Now, in many ways, these changes that are underway, these reforms that we're implementing, send a very strong message that South Africa is indeed open for business and tourism. As we open for tourism, the Chinese market, the Indian market, the market in the Middle East, the market in Europe and all over are waiting to come as tourists to our country. We want a nation in which prosperity and opportunity is shared by all. For many decades, our economy has been held back by the exclusion of the vast majority of South Africa's people. Black South Africans were deprived of land, of capital, of skills, and of opportunities. Our economy was starved of the potential that it has. And this is why we need to transform our economy and to make it more inclusive. That is why our focus is on empowering our people, on empowering women and persons with disabilities because they were deliberately excluded from playing a role in the economy of their own country. And we will set up a transformation fund worth 20 billion rand a year over the next 5 years to fund Black-owned and small business enterprises. We will fast-track the regulations of the Public Procurement Act to ensure that businesses that are owned by women, by young people, and persons with disabilities receive equitable opportunities in government contracts. And we have started and will continue to train women entrepreneurs to enable them to compete for government tenders. In November last year, we launched the National Skills Fund Disabilities Program. In its first phase, this transformative initiative will empower over 10,000 persons with disabilities through tailoring training for them and through ensuring that they get stipends and specialized tools. This part of the work we must undertake as business, as government and labor and civil society to enable people with disabilities to play an important role in the economy of our country. For far too long, they've been relegated to the back rooms of everything. Through these programs, we are not only righting a grave historical wrong, we are unleashing the potential of our economy for sustained growth. We want a nation where there is work for all, where every person can earn a decent living and realize their potential, where the rights of workers are protected and working conditions are improved, where women and men receive equal pay for work of equal value. We need to ensure that growth creates jobs for all, and especially for young people. The success of the presidential employment stimulus
You must get rid of the Employment
shows how
Equity
public
Act.
employment programs can create meaningful work that generates a wider benefit and contributes to sustainable employment. The employment stimulus that we introduced during the COVID period has created almost 2.2 million work and livelihood opportunities through innovative models that provide high-quality work to participants. The Social Employment Fund has created over 80,000 jobs this year. It has supported more than 12,000 participants to enter entrepreneurial activities. During the past year, young people secured 235,000 work opportunities through the National Pathway Management Network. And this is underpinned by the SA Youth Mobi platform. We now need to build on these innovative programs to create jobs for young people at ever greater scale. And to create jobs, we must leverage our unique strengths as well as our unrealized potential to build the industries of the future, as in green manufacturing, renewable energy, electrical vehicles, and the digital economy that is also driven by artificial intelligence. This year, we will finalize a modernized and comprehensive industrial policy that drives economic growth. We will achieve this ambition by focusing on the opportunities in localization, diversification, digitization, and decarbonization. We are working towards the full implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which will tear down the barriers to trade on our continent. As the most industrialized economy on the African continent, we are positioning ourselves to be at the center of this new growing market. We are harnessing the sun and the wind to make our country a leader in renewable energy and green manufacturing. With an abundance of cheap green energy, we can produce products that are competitive anywhere in the world and create hundreds of thousands of new jobs in this process. We are making sustainable use of the rich abundance of the South African earth by supporting our farmers, improving our logistics network and rural supply chains, and opening new export markets for products that we grow or produce. We can significantly expand our agricultural sector. We want South Africa to be leading in the commercial production of products such as hemp and cannabis, a product that is so well known in the Eastern Cape and KZN, a product that our forebears have produced for generations and generations. We can add modern value to it and bring it to the shelves of the entire world. We are breathing new life into the mining industry, which remains one of our most important and valuable endowments. I often say that mining was the bedrock on which our economy was built, and it continues to be a sunrise industry. We are on track to implement a new, modern and transparent mining rights system this year,
John Steenhuisen smile
which
en
will
breed,
unlock
jong.
investment in exploration and production. We will put in place an enabling policy as well as a regulatory framework for critical minerals. By beneficiating these minerals here in South Africa, we can make use of the extraordinary wealth that lies beneath our soil for the benefit of our people. Even more valuable than our natural resources are the diversity, the energy, and the talent of the people of this country. The services sector is now the largest part of our economy, ranging from financial services to retail, hospitality, tourism, and the burgeoning creative industry. The tourism sector is growing rapidly, with close on to 9 million tourists having visited our country last year.
Except for service delivery on a community level.
The attractive sites in our country, which we want to see growing more and more, is Robben Island. I visited Robben Island on the 8th of January. And I got to hear that in a year they are now going to receive 300,000. They want to grow it to 500,000 visitors in a year. And most of these visitors are South Africans. So we will grow tourism through our visa reforms, through increasing the number of flights to key destinations, and through the marketing of our country as the best country to visit in the world. And we have also seen strong growth in digital services, as well as business process outsourcing, as well as data centers. As the need for data grows in the world, our country is seen as a reservoir of having data centers. And this is continuing to create jobs for young people. To support this growth, we are investing in skills development for the industries of the future. The Jobs Boost Fund has pioneered a new model that links funding for skills in demand for the successful placement and particularly employment of young people. We are expanding our support for small and medium enterprises and for the informal economy, which sustains millions of jobs as well as livelihoods across our country. This includes streamlining funding for small businesses, unlocking venture capital for high-growth startups, and developing a regulatory environment that enables rather than restricts informal enterprises. To build an innovative economy,
I'm having a customer here
the
quickly.
Department of Science
I'm
and
going to
Technology
switch screens so I
and Innovation
might lose
will
picture.
establish an innovation fund to provide venture capital
Apologies for inconvenience.
to tech startups that emerge from our higher education institutions. We are calling on business to use the SA Youth Mobi platform, which currently has some 4.5 million young people registered for their hiring purposes. We're calling on business to support the Youth Employment Service to scale up workplace experience opportunities over the coming year. We want a nation where no one goes hungry. For 30 years, since the dawn of democracy, we have worked together to reduce poverty. Today, our country spends around 60% of our national budget on the social wage, on health, on education, on social protection, community development, and public employment programs. More than 28 million unemployed and vulnerable people in our country receive social assistance. More than 10.5 million learners go to public schools where they do not have to pay fees. Last year, over 900,000 students from poor working-class backgrounds and poor families and working-class backgrounds received funding to study at universities and colleges. Now, through these programs, we are alleviating the worst effects of poverty. We are providing the means through which South Africans can rise above poverty that has been passed down from one generation to the next. But we have much to do, and much more work needs to be done to end poverty in our country. We must do much more to ensure that women in particular no longer face the hopeless task to feed and clothe their children. While government invests heavily to support poor and unemployed people, these programs are fragmented and sometimes they are difficult to access. We are therefore building an integrated system of support for poor and unemployed people. We are strengthening existing programs from job search support to public employment and making sure that together they provide people with pathways out of poverty. Rather than expecting those in need to approach several government agencies separately, a citizen should be able to go to one place to receive all the support that they need. To protect the gains that we have made since 1994 in advancing children's rights, we will adopt the National Strategy to Accelerate Action for Children, which focuses on 10 key priorities, including poverty reduction, child protection, and addressing malnutrition. The Social Relief Distress Grant is an essential mechanism for alleviating extreme poverty. We will use this grant as a basis for the introduction of a more sustainable form of income support for unemployed people. Now, central to our efforts to end poverty and to develop our economy is to provide decent, quality education to every South African. We are immensely proud of the achievements of the matric class of 2024. It's a class which achieved the highest pass rate in our country's history. Now, 87% of learners who sat for their matric exams passed. For the first time in the history of our country,
Guys, I just want to print a
nearly
CV for a
half
customer.
of these learners achieved
Apologies for the
bachelor pass.
inconvenience.
Nothing can diminish, frankly, nothing can diminish our pride in the hard work of these learners and the steady support of their teachers, parents, and broader community. And let us give them a big round of applause. We should all be proud of the class of 2024. But our immediate focus is to expand access to early childhood development for every child. Now, this will be achieved through registering and formalizing existing ECD centers and ensuring that they have the facilities, the training and material that they need to provide quality learning. We will focus on ensuring that every child can read for meaning in the foundation phase to set them up for success in later years. To achieve this, we are implementing mother tongue-based bilingual education. We do this to improve literacy and numeracy, and rolling out lessons plans, reading books, and other interventions that have been proven to work. The Funza Rushaka bursary scheme will continue to prioritize students who want to pursue a teaching career in the foundation phase. Last year, we signed the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, which was passed by this Parliament. Now, this act is pivotal for ensuring that education is accessible and is inclusive for all South Africans. This year, the Minister of Basic Education will introduce national policy, the norms and the standards and regulations to empower all partners in the basic education field to support the implementation of the Act. Now, to ensure that the economy has the skills that it needs, we are increasing the production of artisans through TVET colleges. Now, this is part of the shift we are undertaking towards education and skills development that combines formal learning with job training. Now, drawing on the models that have proven to be so successful in other countries, we're calling on the private sector to offer young people experiential learning opportunities while they undertake their studies. We are implementing phase 1 of the comprehensive student funding model for higher education to address the needs of the missing middle. This will support approximately 10,000 students in the first year. We want a nation in which there is quality health care for all. This year, we will proceed with the preparatory work for the establishment of the National Health Insurance. Now, this This includes developing the first phase of a single electronic health record system, the preparatory work to establish the Ministerial Advisory Committees on the health technologies and healthcare benefits, and an accreditation framework for health service providers. The NHI will reduce inequalities in healthcare by ensuring that everyone gets fair medical treatment. Now, the NHI will save many lives by providing a package of services that include, for example, even more especially, maternal and newborn care and services also for people living with HIV, those with TB, and those suffering from non-communicable diseases such as heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. Our most immediate priority is to strengthen the health system and improve the quality of care. A vital part of this is the modernization, the improvement, and the maintenance of existing health facilities and the construction of new hospitals and clinics. A number of hospitals are under construction or are undergoing revitalization. Now, these include the Limpopo Central Hospital, the Siloam District Hospital in Limpopo, the Tlhabeng Regional Hospital in the Free State, the Bambisana District Hospital, Zitulele District Hospital in the Eastern Cape, and the Bupelong Psychiatric Hospital in Northwest. Now, our projects, rather other projects, are at various stages of design and
Once more,
development.
apologies
Now,
if
this
the
includes
image goes black. I'm going to quickly print the CV for a customer.
New central hospitals, 5
Apologies for
new
the
district
inconvenience.
hospitals, 5 community health centers, and a new psychiatric hospital. To improve patient experience, we are putting more emphasis on reducing waiting times, cleanliness, and staff attitudes in the public health facilities. We are encouraged by the great progress the country has made towards ending HIV and AIDS as a public health threat. By the end of March 2024, 96% of people living with HIV knew their status. 79% of these were on antiretroviral treatment, and 94% of these were on treatment with virally suppressed conditions. Now, to ensure that we reach the target of 95, 95, 95, which has been set by the World Health Organization, we will this year launch a massive campaign to look for an additional 1.1 million people who are not yet on treatment. We are concerned about the potential impact
Thank you for your understanding and
of the decision
patience.
by the United States government to suspend some of its funding for HIV and TB programs in African countries for 90 days. Now, this funding that we get accounts for about 17% of our country's HIV spend. We have been able, over the years, to provide funding from our own resources, our own fiscus, for our HIV and TB programs. We are looking at various interventions to address the immediate needs and ensure the continuity of the essential services that we might lose if this funding does not come through. Now, to tackle inequality, we do need to undo apartheid special planning, which has scarred our country, our cities, and forced many people to live far away from areas of work and opportunity. We have delivered millions of housing opportunities since 1994, providing safety as well as dignity to poor households. Yet the practice of building housing developments on the periphery of urban centers has in many ways perpetuated inequality and urban sprawl. Going forward, we are going to build more housing in our city centers and closer to places of work and business. Now, we are redesigning our housing subsidies and directing more funding towards programs that enable people to buy or rent a home in an area of their choice. We will release more underutilized state properties for affordable housing development. And we are working with our provinces and metros, and I'm glad that a number of our premiers are here as well. We're working with them to reclaim buildings that have been hijacked in the city centers and repurpose them for public use. Now, we will provide 300,000 service stands to qualifying beneficiaries to enable housing development in well-planned, connected communities along key development corridors. We will clear the backlog of title deeds for subsidized housing, turning homes into household assets. And we will review land use, building, and other regulations to enable low-cost property development, including backyard housing. This represents a fundamental rethink of how the state delivers housing at scale while turning our cities into engines of growth and opportunity. In making our cities work for their residents, we will restore the remaining passenger rail corridors and stations to full service. More than 80%
This guy make me
of
print a
passenger rail
CV and then he walks away.
have been returned to service. Now, PRASA has introduced over 200 modern, locally produced trains on its network to provide a low-cost option for public transport. Over the next 5 years, we will restore PRASA's signaling system so that we can put all our new trains to work and commuters can be assured that they can reach work safely, affordably, and on time. Now, we also want a nation in which everyone is safe. The police continue to work with other law enforcement agencies to dismantle organized crime syndicates and combat financial and violent crimes. The South African police has partnered with the metropolitan municipalities and continues to work with communities to fight crime in the priority provinces where crime is particularly high. Now, we are intensifying Operation Shanela. Shanela has been successful in arresting suspects, recovering firearms, and seizing stolen vehicles. And we must continue to tackle the scourge of gun violence that has continued to plague our society for decades. I have asked the Minister and the National Commissioner of Police to prioritize reducing gun-related crime and violence. Now, this includes
It's the police
preventing the diversion of firearms
that sells the firearms into the
illicit
communities.
market and recovering illegal firearms in circulation. We know from international evidence and our own experience that this is the most effective way to reduce overall violence.
What's going on with the sound?
Analytics and smart policing solutions
I think
for
it
modern
was
law enforcement.
by
We
them.
have seen the value of technology in fighting crime, and a number of countries that have opted to utilizing technology have made great progress. And by utilizing artificial intelligence in its fraud risk detection and verification work, SARS has prevented the leakage of over 95 billion rand in impermissible refunds. It has recovered 20 billion in revenue and dismantled an illicit tobacco and gold scheme. We continue to work across society to end the violence that is perpetrated against women. We have promulgated the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Act, establishing a national structure to oversee a coordinated response to this crisis. We will ensure that the Council is fully functional and properly resourced. We continue to strengthen support to victims of gender-based violence. There are now 65 Tutuzela centers across the country. Out of the 52 districts in our country, 44 have gender-based violence shelters. All police stations in the country now have victim-friendly services, and another 16 sexual offences courts will be established in the next financial year. Now, we want a nation
In a
that deals with corruption. Last year, we
politician corruption court.
the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption as a permanent entity of the NPA dedicated to investigating and prosecuting high-level corruption.
Like PHALA PHALA.
We will ensure that the Directorate is fully resourced and have access to information that it needs to prosecute state capture cases and hold those responsible to account. We are establishing a world-class digital forensic lab to support the investigation of complex corruption and financial crime. We are making steady progress in implementation of the recommendations of the State Capture Commission, including signing into law several legislative reforms. The Special Investigating Unit and Asset Forfeiture Unit report that over 10 billion rand has been recovered in state capture-related cases. Now, this year, the Department of Justice and Constitutional Department will report on the review of the Anti-Corruption Architecture, National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council. This is expected to streamline legislation to eradicate duplication of mandates and foster greater cooperation between law enforcement agencies. And we will finalize the whistleblower protection framework and introduce the Whistleblower Protections Bill in Parliament during this financial year. And this year, we will strengthen South Africa's system of dealing with terror financing and further legislative systems improvements. To secure our removal from the International Financial Action Task Force grey list, we have made significant progress in addressing the weaknesses that were identified in our law enforcement system, with 16 out of 22 action items fully addressed. We want a nation that is at peace with the world. We want to continue through our international relations to advance the well-being of the people of South Africa as we seek to advance the well-being of humanity. Now, we will work to strengthen our trade relations around the world and to leverage our strong and diverse global alliances to make our economy more resilient. The key pillars of our foreign policy remain the promotion of human rights, peace and friendship, and the strengthening of fair trade and investment ties with other countries. Now, these are the principles that guide our presidency of the G20 this year.
Not that much to say.
We have chosen the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainable development to underscore the need for cooperation and partnership amongst the countries of the world. For the first time in its history, the G20 is being hosted on the African continent. And this is particularly important following the admission of the African Union as a member of the G20. It is a great opportunity for us to place the needs of our continent and the rest of the global South more firmly on the international development agenda. Our G20 presidency is a valuable opportunity for South Africa to advance efforts towards greater global economic growth and sustainable development. Africa remains at the center of our foreign policy. We continue to work to strengthen the African Union, to support the achievement of peace, development, and economic integration on our continent. We know that our future prosperity is intricately linked and bound to the prosperity of the African continent. For South Africa to thrive, we must ensure that Africa does indeed thrive as well. And we must silence the guns on our continent. Now, since the advent of democracy, we've been instrumental in restoring stability in countries such as Côte d'Ivoire, Burundi, South Sudan, Lesotho. More recently, we've been part of the SADC peacekeeping mission in Mozambique that has brought relative calm and stability to the Cabo Delgado province. The presence of South African peacekeepers in the Eastern DRC is testament to our continued commitment to peaceful resolution of one of the world's most intractable conflicts that has gone on for years and that has cost millions of lives and displaced many people. Now, we call on all parties to embrace the current diplomatic efforts to find a peaceful resolution, including honoring the Luanda process. We will attend the joint summit between SADC and the East African Community scheduled to take place in Tanzania this weekend, where we will reiterate our call for a ceasefire and a resumption of talks to find a just and enduring solution, and we will make sure that our boys, our soldiers do come back home. We have always believed that the freedom that we won and the international solidarity from which we benefited does impose a duty on us to support the struggles of those who continue to experience colonialism and oppression. South Africa continues to stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine, who have endured decades of illegal occupation and are now experiencing indescribable suffering. And South Africa has acted in accordance with its obligations under the Genocide Convention by instituting proceedings against Israel in the International Court of Justice. We are fully committed to the articles of the United Nations, including the principles that all members should settle their international disputes by peaceful means. We support the principle of respect of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of all states and peoples. We continue to participate in the different peace processes seeking to bring about a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. South African delegations have been instrumental in developing a framework for negotiations towards a just peace in Ukraine based on the UN Charter and international law. Our country continues to advance its agenda of cooperation and multilateralism through its membership of the United Nations, the African Union, the Non-Aligned Movement, BRICS, and a number of other international bodies. As humanity confronts unprecedented challenges, we are determined that a reformed and representative United Nations must be at the center of global affairs, and we will continue to push for progress on the reform of the UN Security Council to be a more inclusive, more effective body that is able to ensure peace and security. And we will work to ensure that the needs of the people of the world are advanced. And the work that we do and what we stand for does need to be explained to many key players, especially to our trading partners and the many countries and leaders that we interact with on the global stage. And with a view of explaining the positions that we have taken, and in particular, the objectives that we wish to achieve during our presidency of the G20, I have decided to send a delegation of government and other leaders to various capitals on our continent across the world. This delegation will interact with various key players on a variety of matters that affect South Africa's interests. I will direct that they leave as soon as possible to interact with various key players on our continent and in the world, so that our presidency of the G20 objectives can be well explained. All these things that we speak of are possible. As South Africans, we know the power of cooperation, of what is possible when people of different backgrounds, different races, cultures, languages, and ethnic groups and religions come together behind a shared objective. The formation of the Government of National Unity provides us with an opportunity to show once again that we can achieve what we can achieve by working together. And I call on all South Africans, united in our diversity, to come together in the national dialogue that we are going to have to define a vision for our country for the next 30 years. The national dialogue must be a place where everyone has a voice. It must be a place to find solutions that make a real difference in people's lives. The dialogue must reaffirm that each and every one of us has a role to play in building the nation that we want. We must therefore be builders and not people who seek to destroy the future of South Africans. While we may differ on many issues, we agree on one thing, that we need to build a better South Africa and improve the well-being of our people, and that we should do so not by sitting on the sidelines and shouting. We should be in the scrum working to develop the lives of our people. And so, as we enter the new era in the world and in our own country, let us speak of empathy, of compassion that we have for one another. Let us speak of the pride that we have of our country and all that we have achieved. Let us speak of the determination that won us freedom and drives us forward now to a better future. With this determination, we will work together to make this an era of growth, of progress and transformation. We will work together to build the nation that we want. And we will only be able to do it by working together and not by shouting together. And we will only be able to do it by ensuring that we as the leaders ensure that those who will come after us, our children and our grandchildren, inherit a country that we have helped to build, not to destroy. Thank you very much.
Klompie notas, klompie notas. Klompie notas. Stop hulle nou die sound.
The House has not yet adjourned.
The Honorable, the President. Order, honorable members. After I have adjourned the joint sitting, members should rise and remain at their places until the procession has left the chamber.
Not to
The guests
destroy.
in the gallery
Thank you
should
very
remain
much.
seated until the judiciary has left.
Klompie
The
notas,
ushers will
klompie
indicate,
notas.
when the doors are open. The
Klompie
procession
notas.
led by the usher of the Black Rod and the acting sergeant at arms will leave the chamber in the following order.
Stop hulle nou die sound.
The Speaker of the National Assembly, the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, the President, the Deputy President, the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly,
Order, honorable
the Deputy
members.
Chairperson of the National
After
Council
I have
of
adjourned
Provinces,
the joint
the Deputy
sitting,
President,
members
the
should
Secretary
rise
to
and
Parliament.
remain at their
That concludes
places.
the
The changes were made with regards to
and
the
the acting
venue.
sergeant at arms.
Members are requested to join their spouse at the ICC. Dinner will be served and the beverages. Thank you very much.
Hy is weer 'n ernstige dinner, 'n 7-course meal. Man se plate kos 'n 1.5k.
And of course, that is the end of the State of the Nation address as delivered by President Cyril Ramaphosa. And of course, processions are leaving now, and that is the mace and the black rod. Of course, the chairperson of
Jo,
the
ek het
National
gedink
Council
ek gaan
of Provinces, Ms. Rifiki
ernstige kommentaar lewer op die notas. Maar soos ons nou leer, die hele speech as 'n repeat van al sy speeches wat hy nog dusver gedoen het. En het is maar net 'n klomp man se plate kos 'n 1.5. Sorry, ek het klomp different sources of sound wat deurkom en dit confuse my. Ek gou net afsit.
To economic growth, where he committed that there will be 100 billion that will be set aside for black-owned
He committed to
and,
economic
business
growth
owned by women,
since he entered
as
into
part of
office.
the transformation
There has been
fund
economic
is going to be
decline.
established to fund
What is
small
there
businesses.
to look
And
forward
also he
to
also
in
made a
terms of
commitment
economic
that
growth?
They will women entrepreneurs will be trained so that they can also compete for tenders, so that they also get to participate in the economy, and we create an economy that is inclusive to vulnerable members also for our society, meaning the disabled people.
And of course, on your screen right now is members singing, of course, and obviously happy with the president, what the president had to outline. Of course, this is a yearly thing that we see, that after the State of the Nation address, members will break out in song in much of a celebration of the way that the president has paved for the year ahead. Of course, like myself,
Die is die eerste GNU SONA
that the president has outlined,
en ek is nogal nie verbaas nie, maar in 'n manier ook verbaas hoe vol smiles die Democratic Alliance is.
This was the much anticipated
Right?
State of the Nation address. And
Wat
we
vir
are
my
now waiting for
ook maar net 'n
members to make their way
indikasie
out
is,
to share their reaction
daai is
to what they
klomp
think of
formalities
what
wat hy
the
haar
president had to say.
uitgespeel het.
Now, obviously we have to
Het
think
is maar
about
net woorde
what is it
sodat
that members
ons
had
kan
to say,
gerus
especially
voel.
members of the opposition.
Hulle
Yes,
weet wat gaan hulle doen in die agterskerms.
Of course, you can stay tuned.
Hulle weet presies wat hulle gaan doen in die
And we will have
agterskerms.
those reactions
Nou wil hulle
for
kom
you
voorgooi hier
outside in
die GNU is in unison.
Cape Town.
Kyk daar vir Uncle Mackenzie.
Minister,
Hy is die-
of course, there also Mr.
Hy is die
Vincent
minister of
McKenzie,
happiness.
as well there as the member
Hy is die een wat
of
sommer
the
eerste gaat
City
sing.
Hall.
Maar nog steeds word die South African
outside the
natives,
Cape Town City Hall.
die Khoi en San,
And obviously that is the motorcade
nie gerecognize as First Nation nie.
VIPs. Of course, reactions we
Hulle praat aanhoudend van hulle gaan engage en hulle gaan leaders recognize, die traditional en cultural leaders. Maar hulle word nie gerecognize as First Nation nie.
Thank you, Tsepo and Masego. I'm standing
Hoekom is dit so
outside
moeilik
the
om
Cape
daai
Town
te
City
doen?
Hall. The president has
Want hulle
announced
weet die
the
game change
state of the
sodra
nation as we now
ons
going to be
First
getting
Nation
reaction
status kry,
from
het
the
change die
members of
game.
parliament. And standing with me is the Minister of
Dan moet die
Comparative Government and
colonizers
International Affairs, Mr. Velenkosi Hlapisa.
terugstaan
Hlekazi, siyabonga kakhulu
en
for
laat die
attending
rightful
parliament
owners
today. Can we
instaan.
get your reflection on the president's address, please?
Yeah, what emerged is that South Africa must be a construction site. If South Africa can become a construction site, this will create job opportunities, infrastructure will be maintained, and he spoke much that if we want to make South Africa work, let us make the local government work. I will be championing the white paper review as the president has tabled it, that it needs to change the setup of our country, and the funding model of our municipalities is what is going to make our municipalities work, because more resources must be injected to our municipalities so that they become functional. That is where economy must be injected. That is where investment must be done. Once they are functional, there will be an attraction point for investment in our country.
Maak vir opgooi.
Siyabulela kakhulu.
Thank you.
Well, viewers, that was Mr. Velenkosi Hlapisa, the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, who was sharing his views on what the president had to say, especially in relation to turning the country
As hy leader Desmond na agter.
and capacitating the municipalities. We're standing here, like I said, outside the Cape Town City Hall. We're getting reactions from the members of parliament. So we'll be walking around trying to see if we can get more of these members to talk to us. The president has outlined quite very critical issues, especially in relation to infrastructure development in the country, and as well as turning the country into a construction site.
There will be an attraction point for
looking
investment
for
in our
people to
country.
Maak
talk
vir
to.
opgooi.
Back quickly to the studio, but well, viewers, that was Mr. Velenkosi Hlapisa, the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, who was sharing his views on what the president had to say, especially in relation to turning the country.
As hy leader Desmond na agter.
First State of the Nation address of the 17th Parliament will be held on Thursday,
Kom ons kyk hoe of waar iemand anders
on
is.
11 and
So
12
we'll be walking
February,
around
concluding with
trying
the
to
reply
see
by the
if we can
President
get
on
more of these
13
members
February.
to talk to us.
The State of the Nation address, commonly
the
referred to
president
as
has
SONA,
outlined quite
is one of the
very
most
critical issues, especially in relation
Kyk
to
hoe waar mense is wat buite
infrastructure
kan
development in the country, and
enige reactions doen.
Investment must be done. Once
a
they are
construction
functional,
site.
there will
But,
be
for
an
now,
attraction
as I'm
point
busy
for
looking
investment
for
in our
people
country.
to talk
Maak
to.
vir opgooi.
Back quickly to the studio, but well, viewers, that was Mr. Velenkosi Hlapisa, the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs,
followed by 2 days of debate on 11 and 12 February, concluding with the reply by the President on
As hy
13
leader
February.
Desmond na agter.
The State of the Nation address, commonly referred to as SONA, is one of the most important
Kom ons
annual
kyk hoe
events
waar
followed by
of waar
2 days of
iemand
debate
anders
on the
is.
parliamentary calendar. It is an integral part of Parliament's oversight function over the executive. Watch the address live across Parliament's platforms at 7 p.m. Follow Parliament on social media and join the conversation using hashtag SONA2025. Your Parliament, your voice, your future.
Functional, there will be an attraction point for investment.
Maak vir opgooi.
South Africa's parliament will proudly host the 11th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit, known as the P20. bringing together leaders from G20
Followed by
national
2
parliaments
days of debate
to shape
on
global
11 and
policies
12
and reinforce parliamentary
concluding with the
oversight
reply by the
in international
President on
decision
Hy
making.
leader Desmond na agter.
As the
The
first
State of
African
the
country
Nation
to
address,
lead the
commonly referred
P20,
to as SONA,
South Africa's
is one of the
parliament
most
is
important
championing
annual
Africa's
forums.
active participation in global governance and economic policy making,
It is an integral
ensuring
part
the
of Parliament's
continent is a
oversight
driving
function
force
over the
in
executive.
shaping the future we want.
Watch the address live across
Parliament will
platforms
play
at
a
7
critical
p.m.
oversight role,
Follow Parliament
ensuring
on
that
social
South
media
Africa's
and
commitments
join the
as G20
conversation
president
with hashtag
translate
SONA
into real
2025.
economic growth,
Your
job
Parliament,
creation,
your
and
voice,
social
your
development.
future.
The P20 summit will embed African perspectives in global decision making, ensuring that policies on trade, South Africa's parliament will proudly host the 11th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit, known as the P20, bringing together leaders from G20
Followed by
national
2 days
parliaments
of debate
to shape
on
global
11 and
policies
12
and reinforce parliamentary
concluding with the
oversight
reply by
and
the
international
Hy
decision
leader
making.
Desmond na agter.
As the
The
first
State of
African
the
country
Nation
to
address,
lead the
commonly referred
P20,
to as SONA,
South Africa's
is one of the
parliament
most
is championing
important
Africa's
annual
active
forums.
participation in global governance and economic policy making,
It is an integral
ensuring
part
the
of Parliament's
continent is a
oversight
driving
function
force
over the
in
executive.
shaping the future we want.
Watch the address live across
Parliament will play a critical oversight role,
Follow Parliament
ensuring
on
that
social
South
media
Africa's
and
commitments
join the
as G20
conversation
president
with hashtag
translate
SONA
into real economic growth, job creation,
your
and
voice,
social
your
development.
future.
The P20 summit will embed African perspectives in global decision making, ensuring that policies on trade, South Africa's parliament will proudly host the 11th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit, known as the P20, bringing together leaders from G20 national parliaments to shape global policies and reinforce parliamentary oversight and international decision
Hy
making.
leader Desmond na agter.
As the first African country to lead the P20, South Africa's parliament is championing Africa's active participation in global governance and economic policy making,
It is an integral
ensuring
part
the
of Parliament's
continent is a
oversight
driving force
function over
in
the
shaping the future we want.
Watch the address live across
Parliament will play a critical oversight role,
Follow Parliament
ensuring
on
that
social
South
media
Africa's
and
commitments
join the
as
conversation
G20 president
with hashtag
translate
SONA
into real economic growth, job creation,
your
and
voice,
social
your
development.
future.
The P20 summit will embed African perspectives in global decision making, ensuring that policies on trade, South Africa's parliament will proudly host the
budget the finance minister's tables is going to provide viable funding plans for all of these priorities.
He speaks
shape
about
global policies and reinforce parliamentary oversight and international
Hy
decision
leader Desmond na agter.
As the first African country to lead the P20, South Africa's parliament is championing Africa's active participation in global governance and economic policy making,
It is an integral
ensuring
part
the
of Parliament's
continent is a
oversight
driving force
function
in
over the
shaping the future we want.
Watch the address live across
Parliament will play a critical oversight role, ensuring that South Africa's commitments as G20 president.
Look, I think there was an important thing that he said that was very pleasing for me as the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, because we've called for this already over the last 7 months, and that is we need to give the Public Service Commission more powers to have a say in the appointment of directors general and chief executives of state-owned enterprises, because when that process is weak at that level, these are the same people who then appoint people who are weak and incapable and further weaken the state. So I thought that intervention actually was really important. Secondly, on the visa issue, it actually does speak to Home Affairs, because the tourism industry, the Department of Tourism, relies almost entirely on the effectiveness of Home Affairs, and there's absolutely no reason in a country with high penetration of digital devices that we cannot have visas the same as Japan, where it's electronic, you scan your phone when you get in there and they let you in. We should be able to do that, and it should begin to help us deal with corruption as well.
in the lead up to this event, to this SONA, there was a back.
Yes, I would just like to share some news. We have registered. So hopefully on the next SONA, we will be there in person, on the ground, covering the SONA in person. I just wanted to share that aspiration. So please keep fingers crossed. Please pray. And thank you for the support. Thank you for helping make this channel grow. it is only helping us to make it, it's helping us, making it easier to do the work that we do, right? Because we are not getting honest reporting from your mainstream, right? They want to say that they are impartial and don't choose a side, but they do not hold to account our leaders that fail us. For example, nobody is going to ask about PHALA PHALA there, but corruption was such a big part of the speech. But nobody is saying anything about PHALA PHALA now. Yeah, I just wanted to share that. That was my observation. And I hope the economic improvements that he spoke about is going to materialize, because none of the other stuff he spoke about in all his other 7 speeches materialized. Nothing. In fact, we moved backwards. We moved backwards, not forward. We are in a far worse position than what we were under Zuma. We are in a far worse position than what we were under state capture. And what makes it worse is people don't realize that PHALA PHALA is worse than state capture. Because if there was so much evidence that they had on Zuma, why could they not convict him for one crime? And he got convicted for contempt of court, for decided not to appear in court because they were wasting his time. You know, with frivolous nonsense. Because if there was anything substantial, right, then he would have been in prison. Right? Yeah. But let's hear the remarks
And forth among some
and
of
reflections.
the GNU partners, and part of that was whether or not they're finding expression of themselves in what government is doing. As Rise Mzansi, when you listened, did you feel your vision, your views, what your desires were fully addressed?
No, absolutely. Look, I think also our manifesto was possibly the most logical of them all. So if they hadn't touched on some of those things, then I think it would have been illogical itself. But I think there are some things that came out of this speech. I'll make one example. We've insisted for a long time that there is no reason for the state to own both the railway network as well as all the trains. We must own the rail network, but private operators can invest in the trains and go and secure customers so that the government does not have to spend the money itself. The president said it exactly like that. So that's just one example of the kind of thing that we've had in our manifesto that has found expression in the State of the Nation address.
Thank you so much. That is Songezo Zibi, leader of Rise Mzansi, saying that they discovered themselves in that speech that was delivered by President Cyril Ramaphosa today. Of course, when he speaks about infrastructure, the president has announced that over 900 billion will be dedicated to infrastructure development projects over the next 3 years. And that's a big issue because that's where you unlock not only development, but you also unlock the issue of employment opportunities. I do want you to scan a little bit of this area where we are, just take a look at what's happening down there. As you can see, members of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party. I see Mkhuleko Hlengwa from the IFP. I'm going to try to get him. He's also the Deputy Transport Minister. I'll grab the KAK Minister right here, Mr. Velinkosi Nitlabisa. I want to steal you for 2 seconds. Hi, welcome to Eyewitness News. We are live. 2 seconds, we are live. Minister, I'm so sorry. Local government is a critical issue. It was mentioned by the president. It found a lot of attention in the speech. Your takeaway from the local government issues, but as well as the overall temperament of the speech.
Yeah, this goes very well with the turnaround plan which we introduced last year as COGTA. And indeed, the white paper review is going to reimagine our municipalities, those that are not functional and those that are not viable. Under the review of the white paper, we will reimagine the new municipal space as we go forward. This will also address the question of the new funding model. The municipalities that are not receiving or collecting anything, the new funding model will address the reallocation of resources and funds to make our municipalities functional, because if municipalities are functional, South Africa will be functional. The motto of the 7th administration of COGTA is every municipality must work. The new funding model is going to achieve that, and the white paper review is going to achieve such. And again, South Africa is going to be a construction site. Roads, bridges throughout our municipalities should be under construction, which will in turn make the economy revived and grow and make our people to wake up every day to go to work, because if South Africa is a construction site, people will be working and life will be becoming better in every family.
Mr. Tlabisa, what will make things different this time around? We've heard these commitments before. It's not the first time that as a country we are told local government will turn around, that it needs dire intervention and it will happen. This time around, what makes it so different?
I didn't realize my mic was off. I was just expressing the same thing she just expressed. We've been hearing this thing year in, year out. It's going to be progressive. The economy is going to be revitalized. It's going to be a construction site. The economy will be bustling. It will be busy, booming. But then after a week of the speech, then nothing is there to show for. Then it's business as usual. Everything's dead.
Yeah, what is different already? Last year, we communicated into the media the turnaround plan. The turnaround plan addressed the question of the funding model. The president has made a commitment. We will be running with this program, and the white paper review is already underway. We will be presenting a complete set of a new white paper review in December 2025, which will be giving a completely new structuring of the local government in South Africa. That is going to be different. It's not going to be talking, but it will be action and a production of a new setup of the local government space with a new funding model to make our municipalities work.
All right, thank you so much. That's Velinkosini Tlabisa, Cooperative Governance Minister, who's speaking us today about what he took away from the President's speech with regards to what the portfolio that he looks after. People speak about the state of local government in our country and municipalities. They are in a dire state. Many are dysfunctional. Intervention is required, and it isn't necessarily coming at the pace that it ought to. I'm joined by two leaders now from the I don't know why you look at me like that before I even introduce you. What's wrong with you? I'm looking at two leaders now from the Umkhonto Wesizwe Party, Mzwanele Manyi, as well as Dr. John Tlhope. Good afternoon, good evening. Your sentiments about the speech. First, the tone, and secondly, it started on time. I haven't been at a SONA in a very long time where at the clock, at the top of the hour, the President speaks, takes to the podium. I'll start with you.
Well, we commend him for commencing the proceedings timeously, but that is as far as it goes. We came here with some writing material, hoping to take some copious notes because we're an official opposition party, so that we can be able to engage constructively in our criticism. And we're hugely disappointed because the speech was hollow, definitely not inspiring whatsoever. It did not inspire. The President made a long speech. For example, he's talking about borrowing billions of rands to develop infrastructure. We welcome that move. However, our considered view as the MK party, infrastructure development should focus on rural areas because that's where poverty is experienced firsthand by millions of South African people, black people that I'm talking about. Now, part of the problem, the President...
That is 100% correct, Dr. Tlhope. Every year we hear about infrastructure and the plans for infrastructure, but we still have rural areas that never gets developed, that never sees any form of development pertaining to infrastructure. They still have dirt roads, clay roads, sand roads, gravel roads. No sanitary, no toilets, no running water. But every year we hear about infrastructure, and then it's always focused on the affluent areas where it's already developed.
Doesn't tell us where this money is going to be borrowed from, and we all know the devil is in the detail. If money is borrowed from the West, I'm talking about the World Bank, I'm talking about IMF, normally you have these stringent conditions which are very difficult to meet, right? I hope money will be borrowed. We hope as the MK party, right, I'm talking as a collective, we hope money will not be borrowed from those institutions. Rather, we should turn to BRICS and borrow money. And money which has been borrowed must be used wisely. It must not be stolen. It must be used for the purpose for which it was borrowed.
He never misses a chance to speak about the state capture victories. A lot of people look at your political party and attach it to state capture allegations. What are your thoughts about what he said about fighting corruption?
Just note, she's asking about state capture, but she's not going to speak about PHALA PHALA.
Did that ring hollow to you too?
Fighting corruption is something that we welcome as the MK party. But what we do not like is selective prosecution of certain people who are not liked.
Amen. Amen.
The law must be applied evenly. If you now select certain people and you persecute them, I have every problem with that. The law must be applied evenly, generally, and equally.
I can't let you go without speaking about your leader, former President Jacob Zuma. I know that he was meant to have appeared in court today. There seems to be suggestions that that date today was set to make sure he doesn't arrive here because he was intended to be a guest today. But one would imagine you've been a judge. Court dates are not set randomly, ad hoc. Just your reaction to the allegations, the claims, suggestions that actually that was to try and keep him away from coming to the SONA, and what you know as somebody who's been a judge.
Well, let's forget about the fact that I was a judge because I was fired summarily by sin.
Yes, impeached.
I would rather focus on what I know. There is no evidence to my attention that this was done deliberately. But we all know anything to do with President Zuma, one is always suspicious because he is treated in a manner that is different from other people. So I would not rule out that as a reasonable possibility. I know for a fact our President Zuma wanted to come here today, and he's definitely coming.
So so ultimately it's a conspiracy theory. I don't want to dwell on it. I want to speak also about the president's decision to address what's happening with the United States. Donald Trump, US president, somebody you have lauded. His re-election was something the MK party celebrated. The reaction to his speech and the tough stance that he took, saying we will not be bullied.
Well, we welcome that. We are an independent country. We are sovereign, and we should not be bullied. I'm not so sure whether, it remains to be seen, however, whether Ramaphosa, knowing him, whether Mr. Ramaphosa means what he says, to be frank.
I'll take it from there. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Those are the leadership here in Parliament from the Umkhonto weSizwe, the main opposition that's been criticized actually by some, EFF specifically, that it's not necessarily playing its role as effectively as it ought to as an opposition party, but they're saying actually the president's speech rang hollow, that they didn't take too much from that particular speech. They're not convinced by a lot of what he's saying. And of course, Dr. John Klopp is saying there that the issue around former President Jacob Zuma, there's no evidence, so it's a conspiracy theory that has been peddled that there was an attempt to keep him from pitching here tonight. I'll tell you who was here tonight. Former President Thabo Mbeki was here tonight. I saw former Deputy President Didi Mabuza was also in the audience. Again, I just want to remind you, I am standing outside what is Parliament. It is the Cape Town City Hall that serves as Parliament, because remember, in 2022 there was that devastating fire, and where we are is usually in the precinct in Parliament, is the Grand Parade, and that's kind of where we are taking in different leaders, their perspectives.
And note, they still haven't released information to let us know what has been lost in the fire. That was very, very pertinent information, and we are suspecting information regarding the land. Hence, Parliament had to be burned down, allegedly.
Their views and their thoughts about that speech. Again, for me, what stood out is how he started the speech and how geopolitics, which is something I did believe will happen, had to also find expression in the message that the president delivered to the nation. Did he get far enough in bringing in his GNU partners? That's one of the questions that we are asking some of the guests. I'm going to pan around just to show you the
Look there behind you is Liegbeck, Meyer, Gordon, Hill, Lewis.
type of activity that is this area right now.
Where's our president? I don't see our president here. Huh? Where's our president? Can anyone tell me? Okay, let me see if...
So you're seeing different leaders who are speaking to several media houses.
Let me see if I can get someone else.
We're speaking to several people, getting their opinions. I see Musi Maimane from Bossa. I'm hoping that he'll make his way here. I've seen Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis as well. And these are the different leaders who've come to the precinct, who are speaking to members of the media, sharing their thoughts on the president's speech. I'm not sure what stood out to you. I did think that education, something that Basic Education Minister Sibuko Kuba said, she hopes it finds expression, saying that you can't plan for the future if you don't.
And why do we only have a right to basic education in this country? Why only basic education? Are we not serious about developing this country and taking our people out of poverty? Why only basic education?
Attend to early childhood development, if you look at foundational education. So those again were some of the comments that did come from him. Interestingly enough, water as expected, was a massive feature. I heard EFF's Julius Malema speaking earlier on that you can't say you're serious about water now when the Guyana water project crisis was happening, when that saga and the corruption allegations there happened, and there was no necessary impetus to address that particular issue. So those are just some of the issues that are raised that will definitely be debated in Parliament when they have to sit for the debate of this particular speech in coming days, where they have to sit and figure out, or where the different parties stand and make their presentations before the joint sitting of the National Assembly. Again, just want you to look around. It is a very different State of the Nation address, in my opinion. Very muted State of the Nation address. For instance, the VIP guests, for instance, who usually join us, aren't here. The structure that was built next door has been taken down, and they've now gone to the, I think, convention center, for instance. A lot of the pomp and ceremony took place as it wanted to. However, you get a sense that it's muted, and in part, some have argued, is purely because of the GNU coalition, that many people have become part of this formation, and as opposed to being opposed to what is being put on offer, they are part of it, they endorse it, and it's difficult for them to be seen to be opposing the messages that were delivered by the president, because they co-signed that message. I am still looking around, I see various leaders, a lot of MK people who are right in front of us. I'm hoping that we get a few more people that we can speak to a little bit. I'm just going to pan for a little bit, look at the activity in the precinct, and I'll bring you, I also want to speak actually to the Cape Town Mayor. Just hang in there for me. Hey.
Oh, sorry. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm very good. Can I go? I'm sorry. Hi, Jordan.
Hi.
Sorry, it's a trial and error every day when we do these things. I'm joined now by Cape Town Mayor Jordan Gill-Lewis. Your sentiments of the president's speech?
As a mayor, I was pleased by the mention of greater cooperation with the Metro Police. That's a direct reference to the work we've been trying to do with the Minister of Police over the last few months since the President was here in Cape Town to sign that historic cooperation agreement. We've got to now get those powers that we've been asking for, powers of criminal investigation for the Metro Police. It sounds very positive. I just spoke to the Minister of Police now about it. He says he's ready to go. So we'll definitely pursue that. I was also pleased to hear about more infrastructure money. That's great for Cape Town. We'll take as much as the President is willing to give us. I think what was lacking as a South African and as a mayor as well is a sense of real urgency about the problems that we have. We hear lots of nice things. The President speaks with great optimism, but all of these things are really urgent. We have 13 million unemployed people.
The issue of hijacked buildings, that's something that affects everybody across the board.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that the bid to deal with these are welcomed, and then the intervention and what to use them for built housing. Your sentiments on that, your thoughts on that?
You may have seen I applauded that statement when he said it, because it is unacceptable that public buildings are hijacked and then can't be used for other public purposes. We would like to turn those buildings into social housing, subsidized housing for the poor, but we cannot do so because they're illegally occupied. We only have one of those buildings, the former Woodstock Hospital, but other cities have got many more. But the fact is, wherever they exist, they must be sorted out. They cannot remain hijacked, and I'm pleased to hear the strong words from the President on that.
My parting shot. In January, I know that there were issues around the stadium and a back and forth between you and the ANC.
Yes.
I found a marquee, a VIP marquee. You laugh because you know exactly where I'm going.
Yes.
The VIP marquee had to be taken down. From my understanding, there was no permission for that particular structure.
Yes.
Just to weigh in on that for me, please.
Yes, well, it was extremely windy today, and the city engineers did not sign off on the safety of that structure, and they were right to do so, because just a few minutes later, it in fact blew down, injuring some SAPS members. They're all fine, no serious injuries, but it just shows that the safety engineers, there's a reason for them. They actually do know what they're doing, and so we were happy to be able to, at the very last minute, accommodate the guests at the CTICC this evening.
All right, thank you so much. That's Cape Town Mayor Jordan Gill-Lewis speaking there, of course, about his own thoughts of this speech that was delivered, and then he went on, of course, to speak about that structure. EWN had reported on it that went down. Suddenly it went down, and he says it wasn't approved, and it was the right move to move the VIP guests. They're not here. I said to you, it's a very toned down State of the Nation address, in part because some of the guests that we often see are simply not here. I'm joined now by Home Affairs Minister Leon Schreiber, your department. Good afternoon, welcome to EWN.
What is he insinuating? Is he saying that those are the garaasmakers?
Your department was a big factor in the president's speech. He spoke about the visas that will help with tourism. He spoke about what you need to do, and also congratulated the issue of the backlog, clearing the backlog. That's something you've been very proud of.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. Good to be with you. So, yes, I think the acknowledgement is important. It's certainly important for the members of our backlog bomb squad, as we call them. I'm sure they were delighted to hear that as well, because it has been a Herculean effort to get that backlog eradicated. We understand that we're living in the past if we're dealing with backlogs. We can't move forward when you're being dragged back in that way. So I think that's very welcome. But perhaps even more importantly, I'm really delighted by the President's endorsement of the digital transformation agenda. Home Affairs is central to digitizing and modernizing government services across the board, because for any government service that you would want to interact with online, we need to know that you are who you say you are. Identity is foundational. That's why the digital ID, building the first components of that, is going to be really critical for us over the next year, and that's going to really be the core of building out access to government services online. The other component that's really important is the electronic travel authorization for visas that the President spoke about. This is all about automating the visa process to make sure that if someone needs a visa to come to South Africa, either as a tourist or perhaps as a high-skilled worker, that they can actually apply online. They don't have to go and travel to a South African mission, and that process is secure against corruption. That's the other great advantage.
The issue of visas for me, and I asked one of the parliamentarians.
Sewende laan is beter. Sorry, ek sien nou eerste van die comments.
Earlier, the issue of visas for me opens up the question mark around bureaucracy, because to deal with visas is one thing, and you're dealing with what allows people to come in and out of the country at a faster pace and dealing with corruption. But South Africans will go about Home Affairs in and of itself is a bureaucratic nightmare. They still complain about that. I know they've praised the backlog bomb squad, but there's still this particular issue as well, that South Africans would never feel satisfied, I think, for a very long time with the state of Home Affairs departments across the country.
No one wants to stand in the queue. No one wants to hear the system is offline. But that's what you get when you have a department like ours that currently only has 40% of the staff members it requires. So we know the fiscus is constrained, the budget is coming up. We're not going to ask for money that doesn't exist. That's exactly why we need to use technology more.
I missed what Jordan Lewis said, but I'm sure he lied.
Innovatively to actually make up for the shortfall that we have, as you say, on the bureaucratic side of things. So I think philosophically it's important for us to say that maybe Home Affairs right now is viewed as a bureaucratic department. I want it to become an IT department. I want it to become, for lack of a better word, a tech company, to make sure that we start viewing technology as our critical enabler.
All right, thank you so much. I want to bring in, once upon a time, the two of you were colleagues in the political party. I want to bring in One South Africa's Musi My Money. Again, for me.
And again, this is a guy, Musi My Money, who also can't be trusted, because the people in his party, the young people specifically, he lied to them by saying that he is not going to register a political party. He is going to remain a political activist organization, right? And he only is recruiting independent community workers, right? Only to later on change and register a party, you know. So he lied to those people he recruited. So if he is able to start this party like that, then he's willing to lie for whatever else he's intending to do.
Me today, what was important was the tone at the beginning of the speech. It was important to acknowledge fallen soldiers. It was important to acknowledge the geopolitics alongside everything else that's happening in our country. Your thoughts?
I'd written a letter to the Speaker of the National Assembly requesting that before we proceed we have a moment of silence for the troops, and I'm glad the Speaker acceded to that request. The tone was correct. The action that comes after that is, how do we make sure that what is 14 today doesn't become 20? And the best way to do is to recognize that that conflict is intractable. We have no financial resources for our troops, and so no more lives must be lost in the DRC. And therefore I am disappointed that the President did not make a solid commitment to bringing back our troops, because we've got so many domestic priorities to fight here in South Africa in terms of infrastructure and in our immediate border.
Education is something you talk about so often. The Basic Education Minister herself speaking about how she had wanted for education to find expression today, that we must think about early childhood development, foundational education. Your thoughts on what came out, and whether or not also it's believable that the commitments being made will actually be met with action and implementation?
Without doubt, the reform of education is long overdue. I think that no one can deny we must congratulate those who passed last year, but let's not mess around with numbers here. Half of the kids got bachelor's pass rates, which means only half of our students passed over 40% and 50%. The majority of them passed at 30%, which is a challenge. In fact, if you talk about a capable state with a public service commission, the reality is that if you don't have graduates coming through there, you are never going to build a capable state. And therefore, when I focus on the issue of education, I welcome the President's initiative on TVET colleges. I welcome the fact that ECDs are going to be the future. But what I'd like to ask the President to do is that while we're spending 60% on the social wage, let us cut this cabinet, let us cut all of these things so that we can get more teachers, reduce classroom sizes, make sure dropout rates are not increased, and make sure that school infrastructure eradicates pit latrines and that more of our young people can get through school. That's what we got to focus on.
And what about the issue of water? He raises water as critical, and that's something that a lot of people want to be able to deal with. The other question, though, is this water issue is not new. We've been having water issues. You've dealt with Day Zero in this very city before. Julius Malema raises the Guyani water project as an issue. Again, believability. I mean, the irony for us today is Minister of Water saying, her outfit's great, but the lady who made it sometimes struggles because there's no water in the village.
Look, water sounds like load shedding that Thabo Mbeki, when he was president, announced. Same announcements, same sort of tone, but years later you're still dealing with similar problems. And I think actually the fundamental issue about water is that water boards are not being paid. And so municipalities are in trouble. Secondly, our relationship with water as citizens need to change. And more crucially, I would urge, and if the President is serious about taking water as a priority, it's not just going to be building dam infrastructure, it's about fixing municipalities so that water leakages are reduced. That has to be the focus, because if you do that and build capable leadership at local government level, it's no use absorbing everything.
And I speak under correction. Also, what's happening here in Cape Town, one of the dams that we rely on for water is on a person's land. And now the city has to pay that person for us to get access to the water. I don't understand. Water that God gave us for free.
Nationally, you need to make sure municipalities are capable. Otherwise, we're going to end up with what we have with load shedding now. Urban centers have electricity, whilst townships have load reduction. We're going to have urban centers with water, and whilst our townships and our communities battling with water reduction as a future prospect.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much, Musi. That's Musi Maimani, the BOSA leader, speaking to us, of course, of what he made of the State of the Nation address. It was the 9th one from President Ramaphosa, a somber one somewhat, of course, with 14 South African soldiers still not having returned, 14 who died on a peacekeeping mission who are yet to return to their loved ones, their remains that is. And so with that chapter still wide open and with geopolitical tensions also taking place that South Africa finds itself at the heart of, that'll be it from me. There'll be days where this speech will be debated by parliamentarians and no doubt